Folks, we're still talking about this whole CM Punk thing, and oh my god, I don't know why it's so difficult for people to understand what's going on. It's really simple. Punk took matters into his own hands, he physically put his hands on another wrestler, and he got fired for it. It's that simple. Based on the majority of the stories that have been coming from people who are working backstage and other professionals, like there has just been nonstop nonsense coming out of All In at Wembley Stadium, like from like a week ago, and it's been driving me crazy. I apologize for the light. But basically, here's the gist of it. About a year ago, Punk won the title, and then there was the infamous media scrum where he basically completely and totally buried Colt Cabana and Adam Page and the EVPs completely unprovoked, while Tony Khan sat there looking like he had to scoop his jaw from the table. There was zero control there. At one point, Tony, what he should have done is he should have just basically cut it short, or he should have just whispered in his ear, you need to stop. Because all it's doing is creating drama in all the wrong places. Say what you will about the EVPs and how they conduct their business or how they act or anything like that, but my opinion now of it has been, if you're going to run your mouth, you're going to get made an example of. And I'm not meaning in the sense of what Punk has said, like, if you say something about me, I'm going to fight you. I mean, no, there are consequences for your actions, and that includes everyone in that situation. Then there was a locker room brawl, which I love how people love to say the EVPs went into Punk's locker room, and that somehow is justification for them to get in, for Punk to just walk right up to one of the Young Bucks and punch him right in the face. Like, no, they're EVPs, and I would argue they have every single right to go in the room and confront him. It's not like they're not allowed to go into someone else's lot. Well, obviously you can't walk in the female locker room, but in this situation, it's more like them confronting him, which is very similar, because isn't that exactly what just happened with All Out? The other, or All In? Yeah, All In. From last week, Jack Perry, during his match, he is knocking on a windshield and saying, "That's real glass, cry me a river." And then he goes backstage, and then this time, instead of him aggressing, elevating it to, an actual fight by assaulting Punk, this time Punk goes to him and basically gets in his face and throws the first punch. I don't care what anyone says. The only other stories that say otherwise are Perry got up and they were standing chest to chest and he allegedly chest bumped him. I'm like, a chest bump or standing chest to chest, I've never really considered that throwing the first punch. It's basically get in my face, throw the first punch. Give me a reason to not have to go to jail, I guess, would be the appropriate thing. My God, the lighting in here is horrible. I look so pale because I'm leaning up against two pillows on this couch, and the lighting just, I don't know. But this time it was Punk. So hold on a minute. So if we go back a year, he runs his mouth completely unprovoked. No one else who had said, even with Adam Page's promo where he was talking about standing up for the workers or the boys, it was a very cryptic, somewhat shoot promo about Colt Cabana where he never actually mentioned him by name, but then Punk then returned fire by doing a shoot promo on Page when he wasn't even supposed to, and when Page wasn't even in the building to respond, so that made him look even worse. So when Punk at the media scrum runs his mouth and is confronted, he throws the first punch, and people defend him. Now Perry makes an offhand comment about Cry Me a River, it's real glass. Punk then confronts him, throws the first punch, and people are still defending him. So my question to those people are, has anyone ever put you in your place, or have you ever been wrong in your entire life? Because in both situations, I can definitely understand why people can be mad at both parties. But in this current situation, I have no idea why we're even having this discussion. He is clearly someone in the locker room who heralds himself as being this legend that people need to respect, and it's like, no, respect is and always has been a two-way street. Punk even went on the record, I think he mentioned this after the incident in All In, where he mentioned, like, he's respected by people like Harley Race and Dusty Rhodes, so therefore, that means more to him, like, that's respect, and that means more to him than all the people on the internet who say the things that they say. So basically, when he says something like that, I'm left to assume that every time he talks about the fans, he's kind of full of it. I'm sure he's very grateful for where he is with the fans, but let's be honest. When you start talking about how you only care about the criticisms of the legends and not the people online, then don't act like your allegiance is to the fans, because clearly your allegiance is in all of the wrong places. But no, he was wrong to start the physical altercation, and he was wrong to go off script on the scrum and talk about EVPs and Paige and Cabana and all of that. He shouldn't have done that. Khan didn't do anything about it, and basically they put him on. That was it. I mean, he tore his tricep in that match, so he was going to be out. And then allegedly he wanted to work with the EVPs and whatever, and allegedly the EVP said no, which I think just makes them look like a bunch of babies. And then this situation happened where he picked a fight with a younger locker room talent, and rather than just let it go out and start the show, because him and Samoa Joe's match was the start of the show, he instead decided to get into a match, a match. He got into a fight with Jungle Boy backstage. He physically instigated it. He went and was looking for trouble. Then there was all these stories about how, Miro then got into it, and there was a fight that I guess that got, that got completely debunked. But the common denominator here is Punk and his general attitude, and it's always been that of someone he always runs his mouth, and whenever it best suits him, he takes advantage of the situation that he's in order to better, exploit himself. And it's like, you can only come out and be like the cocky, I'm better than you guys so many times without rubbing people the wrong way. Now, I get like the whole best in the world gimmick. Like, that's something he was running with, and fine, run with it. But we're talking about real life stuff, and if you're going to go on and talk about when he came back, he said he came back because of the boys backstage. He came back for the boys backstage, but so far all he's been doing has been getting into fights and altercations with the boys backstage. He talks about respecting the veteran, he deserves respect and respecting veterans, but meanwhile, he'll openly criticize people who have actually been pillars in AEW longer than he has, because he doesn't like the direction of him being booked by current title holders. And then he'll go off on completely uncontrolled rants because he's upset. So at what point do you become a company person? And I've seen a lot of people weigh in on this. I forget who it was. I think it was Alex's World on Facebook. He made a good point. He goes, there's a reason why you never hear about too many of these things from like early WWE, WCW days, and that's because this kind of thing was handled a lot differently, and there was a lot more stern backstage handling of these things. And I felt like with AEW, especially within the past couple of years, a lot of these issues just keep getting blown up more and more. It seems like AEW is kind of like the Wild West, where if someone feels, a good enough reason, there will be fights, there will be scuffles, there will be hands thrown, and I'm not there, I can't speak to it, but at the same time, I am noticing a trend here where a lot of people just seem to want to keep doing things for themselves, and they're not putting the business first. So I respect Tony Khan and his decision to terminate Punk's contract, because honestly, there is no defending that. I'm sorry. You can't. He gave the guy advice before his match telling him not to use real glass, and apparently Punk was not the only person who had told Perry not to use real glass in his match. Perry makes a comment to the camera, doesn't name anyone by name, and then Punk goes, and then like those two run into each other. Punk gets in his face saying you got a problem, and then throws the first punch. Those are the stories I have been hearing. Every story I've heard has always been Punk threw the first punch. There's no excusing that. He threw the first punch a year ago when it was that issue when the EVPs came in his locker room. He threw the first punch here. I'm sorry. It's done. It's over with. He's made it very clear that when it comes to respecting the business, he's more focused on basically protecting himself or his, I don't know, a fragile ego, you tell me, than it is to actually worry about doing the job. I've never been one of those people that tries to be a tough guy. I go and run into people who might say something about me behind my back, and I'm like, and if I did, it would almost never result in throwing a punch, because honestly, like, how does that resolve anything? And again, this is someone who's like, I came back to the business for the people in the back. Well, now he went from assaulting people who are EVPs in the country or in the company to assaulting people in the locker room, in which he said he came back to be there for. I'm just saying, pick your poison. And as far as the future goes, there's a lot of speculation that he's going to go to WWE. I don't know. I'd say with Triple H having a little bit more power behind the scenes, it's a possibility, and I've always been the person that says never say never. But I got to be honest with you guys. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to play out. Someone had mentioned that I guess there was I forget when, it was months ago, Punk showed up, I think, backstage on Raw, and everyone was really happy to meet him, and then when Vince found out about it, he had asked him to leave, and people looked at that as like, it was like sour grapes or whatever, and like Vince not wanting to work with him, and I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. First of all, if you look back to when he left the company, he according to Punk, in his own words, he had a sit down with Vince and Triple H, and he walked out on the company, and he definitely got termination papers, but like the way he worded it, he's like, I walked out on the company, and they were messaging and they were trying to get a hold of him to come back and work his dates, and then they finally served him his papers. And to me, that just sounds like he's just trying to dress up that whole thing. Like he was trying to find a way of saying he didn't quit. I'm like, no, you quit, because he wasn't fulfilling his obligations to, his contractual obligations to appear on certain dates, and he was demanding, to have royalty checks reissued to him, and he had no intention of coming back and wrestling, and it wasn't until, and then he finally got served his release papers. And then, he got that on his wedding day. I don't know if that was planned or not. That's a whole other can of worms. But yeah. So, he's still under contract with AEW, and he went backstage, and I'm sure that Vince was just like, no, get him out of here. He's not under contract here. But and then, there's, beforehand, we're hearing like Ricky Starks came to a pay-per-view, and he was fine. Honestly, I don't know. When it comes to him in WWE, I don't know. I have no idea. That remains to be seen. It is a possibility, but Punk is really going to be under the thumb of Triple H and Vince McMahon, because they're not going to allow him to go out there and go off half-cocked and do what he's doing. It's just not going to happen. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm currently over all this nonsense. I'd say whatever happened to Punk happened because he couldn't control his emotions better. He couldn't deal with people who don't take everything he says as the gospel truth. And honestly, I feel like that's just someone who is their head's in the wrong space. They definitely need to, reevaluate and reassess and decide what the future has for him. If he wants to come back to wrestling and do that more, that's fine. I'm just saying, you can't come back and talk about respect if you yourself are not willing to give respect to the very business that you claim you're coming back to because you want to support the boys. But I'm not seeing a whole lot of that either. I don't know. You tell me, let me know. I'm done with this.